Hey, what's going on, everybody? You know how we get into it, so let's just do it. Today, I want to talk about the United Healthcare, fiasco and everything with the murder of the CEO and Luigi, on the run and kind of having mixed reviews, right? So let's just get into it. In short, I think I'm telling this one the modern day Robin Hood. Um, and I feel like I made a video previously, like, would Robin Hood today be looked at as like a woke criminal or looked at as a hero? And I think it's the sign of our times right now that, previously we've always known like, oh, the rich are corrupt and, they're taking everything from like monarchy and nobility. And then we've had these stories about these champions who have, taken, like literally not like negotiated, had like a peaceful transfer of wealth and everything, like literally taken it, you know what I'm saying? Stolen it back or through murder, through other means, have given economic justice to the poor and the people that are really, really, really struggling. And just as an overall sense of conversation, I wonder where that rests today. Because it seems like most Americans and most of the Western world have this somewhat love affair with business that allows them to be as corrupt and as mean and as brutal as possible, under the notion of capitalism, and like that it's okay, like unfettered capitalism through any means, even if it means like the death and destruction of people, is like kind of okay. And to where Robin Hood figures today are kind of looked at negatively. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, they're stealing, they're trying to redistribute wealth. But I usher in that, like, that spirit of Robin Hood may be a little bit less dead than I thought with Luigi. Um, and foremost, let me say that like I am against murder, because I feel like you have to say the obvious in these days and times. Like, I'm against murder. Someone being shot dead in the street, you know what I'm saying, is wrong. I mean, like, period. There are things that are wrong, you know what I'm saying? Like, and, prayers to his family and his children. But let's like actually talk about this like for real, like the deep issue that it is, and saying that a lot of it is how we envision what crimes are, right, in this nation. And we have a really warped perspective of crime. It's not really about the actual impact, right? It's more so about who does it, right? And we have a lot of examples in this. So if you were a regular person and you went into a store and stole something, you would go to jail, right? But if you're a inside trader or a financial executive and you end up stealing some things, you might get a fine, right? It's like it's the white collar crime of it all, right? You could go and like go into a house and rob a woman of $1,000 and you would go to jail. But you could be a investment firm person and steal hundreds of people's life savings and may not even get caught. You might not even be personally culpable. It may be the company, or they might get a fine and things of that nature, right? You go in and you murder someone, you're going to jail. But if the decisions that you directly impact murder tens of thousands of people in a systematic way, that's not murder in many cases. That's just business as usual, right? So I think we as a people and in this country have different realms of crime. Like, we even tax evasion. It's like if we, average person, cheats on our taxes, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're getting huge fines, the penalty. But rich people who cheat on their taxes, it's looked at as smart and business savvy, right? I mean, so I think we really do have to change our mentality on like what we actually feel crimes are, and that the people that commit these crimes, like the rich people that do all these things in a systemic way, like somehow their crimes are less than those that are like actually poor and desperate and who have been impacted by the policies of said rich people. And why do people like this, like Luigi, commit these crimes? You know what I'm saying? He's not the first one. How many people have like had mass shootings or whatever and like wanted to leave manifestos? Like, this isn't new. But what's new now, and I think everything just shows it's all conditional, is like this manifesto, this stuff is getting some traction. We don't, when they're, the people shooting up the synagogues and people, assassinating, trying to assassinate the president, everything, they're having those manifestos. It's like really not, it's kind of shunned. But this one, people listening. And I think we need to look at the why. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of just having like the black and white, kind of, oh my God, this is just don't listen to anybody, but is it warranted? And what is this attention actually saying? Right? It's actually saying something larger in society, that society is pissed off about this, that they would kind of look past the blanket murder of it and say, well, hey, this person is like culpable for the deaths of tens of thousands of people. And responsibility, should they be responsible in any way? And we are powerless. And I think this gets to like the overall notion of like a power dynamic. And when you're dealing with two parties, there has to be some kind of equal power dynamic or equal threat level in order to keep those relationships honest. Because otherwise, it just results in one side just going up and up and up and up. And I think a really easy example of this is like the Cold War, what I'm saying, during with Russia and America, like post World War II. And just a short synopsis of that is basically it was a nuclear arms race. And, both countries didn't want to agitate each other too much because they both had nuclear weapons that could destroy each other and the earth. So that kind of balance of power, despite them being enemies, despite them having completely divergent objectives, that allowed them to still compromise in certain ways. It allowed them not to move the needle too far in one direction or the other because of that MAD theory, mutual assured destruction. And I feel like that, sadly, in this world, is like how you kind of keep peace, is making sure that like one party is just not completely overwhelming the other. Because then what do you have? You have basically like a unjust power dynamic, and it leads into unrest, which I think is what's happening here. So what we need is business right now, and the elite have all the power. Right? They have all the power, and they are doing everything they can to take our power away, which is our masses, right? Poor people really don't have much, what I'm saying? But what we have is the majority of the people. When we get together and move on something, that is the only thing that can stop them. That's the only thing that they fear, which is why, like, government, what I'm saying, which really is the people. So let's like get that into equation, which a lot of people forget. The government is the people, which is why the rich, wealthy, and businesses try to influence it so much. They try and buy it. They kind of corrupt it. They try and do all the things because those are really the arms of the people that have enough, kind of collective action to thwart some of the business actions. But when we don't do our job and business does what it does, which means it tries to corrupt the government into creating advantages for them, the imbalance widens. And so what I'm suggesting is that, and I'm not advocating, what I'm saying, like for murders of executives, but what I am suggesting is that the power dynamic has to be equal. And right now it's not. Every person in America basically has to get insurance, right? What I'm saying? Like if you're employed, you must get insurance. And the insurance companies are getting less and less options and everything like that. So it's like we really are almost like powerless to determine how much they will cost. So like the competition aspect, and like, are we able to like move around and shift with different things of coverages and ranges? Like we really don't have any power in that dynamic. They can just deny it. Like there are companies that only have one healthcare option choice. That's what you have, right? So we really don't have a dynamic, and they have all the power to do whatever they want to do. And sadly, the threat of murder is a power dynamic, right? Since we're not using a collective bargaining, we're not utilizing the government to regulate these industries, we're allowing money to infiltrate and thinking that universal healthcare is somehow a bad thing. And so this worked. I mean, sadly, it worked, right? So now you have healthcare executives scared. The very next day, Blue Cross reversed a policy that would have been detrimental to patients. And while I am not advocating for the threat of physical violence to executives to make them change, but there must be a threat. It has to happen. That's the only way that change from these organizations will happen. Period, point blank. So again, not advocating violence, but there has to be something that is equally as dangerous to them. And if it's not violence, it's their money, right? So how do we collectively as a group get it together so they can feel threatened enough so that will make some change, right? How many denials do you think they'll have now? You know what I'm saying? With the next executive in power, do you think they're going to think about it? Now, I encourage the thought process, but again, not the violence, but like, how do we accomplish that same thing? How do we accomplish the same sense of urgency and even instilling some fear without the violence? But sadly, it worked. So will there be copycats? I don't know. But stay tuned. This is an interesting story to follow it, to see what's going on and how he's being treated. And he's kind of like the modern day Robinhood, right? So we'll see how this goes. Change your perspective on how we can affect change. And until next time.